So we're in Des Moines, Iowa, and this is a city that, like many U.S. cities, was a really good city that after the summer of Floyd 2020 started kind of going downhill. They had 14 homicides in 2021 and 21 last year in 2022. And they started off 2023 with 6 just in the month of January. So this is still a good, safe city that's kind of on that fence where they could go either way at this point. So I wanted to do a drive-through here. And we're going to go through 7 different neighborhoods of the 53 that the city's broken down into. And this is the Drake Park neighborhood. They kind of start off as the safer and they get worse as we'll go along. So Drake Park has a violent crime rate that's 262% higher than the national average. So that's just worse than what I personally would consider normal city levels to be. And now we're going to enter here into the Carpenter neighborhood. And this one has a violent crime rate 210% higher than the national average. That's kind of close to what a normal city level is. It's where it's starting to get iffier, but it's pretty much normal city levels. Got some businesses that are closed down. But this still would be considered a decent neighborhood. And Des Moines is a relatively small city. It has a population just over 200,000, 217,000, I think. And it's ranked the 111th largest city in America. So it's not small and it's not big. And its murder rate is right around 10, which for a city isn't too bad. And now we're entering into what is called the Mondamin Presidencia neighborhood. And this one starts getting a little worse. This is 367% higher than the national average. Just turn down here. So this is starting to get where you're in a little iffier neighborhood. Still not something where you're on super high alert, but it's getting iffier. And this neighborhood has about 2,100 people. The other 2 that we just went through, those were smaller. They were like 700-800 people in that neighborhood. Kind of like older houses. That one's a little run down. Not too bad yet. And this isn't a city that's big for things like mass shootings. They had 1 in 2022, 1 in 2021, and 1 in 2019. But in 2018 and 2020, they didn't have one. And so far this year, they haven't had one. They did have I think it was a triple shooting, though, at a high school in downtown in January. That accounted for at least 1 or 2 of the deaths. I'm not sure if the second guy died or not. I never looked back into it. So now we're entering into what's called the River Bend neighborhood. This one has a violent crime rate 410% higher than the national average. So now we're starting to get up to little iffier, but it's just like, you know, bad city iffy. It's not something that you'd be really concerned about. And this neighborhood is a little larger. This one's got 2,800 people. There's 53 neighborhoods in Des Moines, and it's not that big of a city, so most of the neighborhoods are on the smaller size. And this city's actually been growing. The population is on the rise, so that might be another reason why the homicides are higher. Likely the reason was just the summer of Floyd, because that made it bad everywhere. But as their population grows, it kind of lends itself to the potential of crime growing. And according to the police last year in 2022, of the 21 homicides they had, most of them were drug related, and apparently all the victims knew the person who killed them. So the police here were at least kind of touting that they don't have random killings. They might have, the murders might have been on the rise, but they don't have random killings like they do, in cities like Baltimore or Chicago, where you're just minding your own business and someone shoots you. But if most of the homicides were drug related, that doesn't have them going in a good direction either. In this city, the governor of the state of Iowa, I think her name's Kim Reynolds. I'm going to do a video on this, a separate video. She just passed the school choice. I don't know what the bill was called here, but it's basically school choice. And within 3 years, everybody's going to have school choice. Right now, it started off with certain groups of people, and each year for the next couple years, it goes up and includes more people. And I'm going to do a separate video on that just to see if having school choice and having better schools starts making the neighborhoods safer or not. Because if the kids aren't learning in the schools, the crime's just going to keep going up. And this is, states are just starting to do the school choice. And I kind of want to see if it's making a difference or not. So I'll do a separate video on that, but that's a good sign that at least they're aware that they need to make changes in the state, and they're going through the effort of doing that. Normally in these videos I drive past a couple of the schools, and I'm not going to, just because, although I can see one right there, I don't know what it is. I would normally drive past a couple of the bad schools and put the stats of the schools, but I'm going to do a whole separate video on the schools. And then hopefully in a year or something, do another follow-up, or a couple years, and see if things have gotten better or worse or stayed the same. So now we're getting into the MLK Park neighborhood. And this is another one that's, it's 381% worse than the national average, the violent crime rate in this neighborhood, which is, again, just, it's in the iffier category. It's not horribly bad, but it's worse than normal city levels. Doesn't look too bad. King Junior Park. This is another one that the population in this neighborhood is 2,800, so it's not a huge neighborhood. Not looking too bad yet. And the ones we're going to get to after this now, that's when we start getting to the ones that are kind of where you kind of watch your back in. But I'm driving through here hoping that the police chief is right and that people in this city aren't just out randomly shooting and killing people, that everything is targeted here. So now we're getting into the Capitol East neighborhood. And this one's getting legitimately kind of shady. This has a violent crime rate 627% higher than the national average. The houses are starting to look a little shoddier. Yeah, definitely the houses are looking a little worse down in this area. That's, I think, the worst. This, what we're in right now, I think is the second worst neighborhood in Des Moines. Talk about keeping your head on a swivel. I sat there for, that was like at least 6 or 7 minutes waiting for that train to go by. And I had left the second worst neighborhood in Des Moines to go to the worst neighborhood in Des Moines, which is up here in a little bit. And I'm sitting there looking for my escape route if someone was to pull up behind me, because everything to the right or left was pretty muddy if you would have had to pull off to try and make a quick getaway. But fortunately nothing happened. This city, even with these bad neighborhoods, it feels relatively safe. You don't get overly creepy feeling about any of it. Although there's not a lot of people outside. I think it's 45 degrees or something out, so it's relatively warm for this time of year. But I don't see a lot of people outside. And we're getting close to the last neighborhood that we're going to drive through, which is the Laurel Hill area. And that's the worst one in the city. It's about another 4 or 5 blocks up. And Laurel Hill's the worst neighborhood, at least as far as the violent crime rate goes. Sometimes some of these cities are actually worse for, like, you know, car thefts or stuff like that. But mainly on my channel, I only really focus on the homicides. That's the main thing. And, you know, there's enough there when you're covering the whole country to keep you busy. But the violent crime rate of the next area we're going to is 681% higher than the national average. And that's the worst one, at least at this time, in Des Moines. Yeah, these houses are starting to look, some of them are very, that one doesn't even have a wall. Look like a shack. So this here then, this is the Laurel Hill neighborhood. And I might do a little bit of downtown just to get to see what that looks like. But otherwise, this is pretty much the end of this video. These actually, for this, having the worst violent crime rate, they must have had like a mass shooting here that killed a bunch of people. Because, well, I guess it's kind of bad. It's not too bad looking if this is their worst neighborhood. But to get a huge violent crime rate, you just need one mass shooting that kills a bunch of people. You know, one family kills off 5 or 6 people, and their violent crime rate is really high, especially with how small these neighborhoods are. Well, I guess the houses are a little shoddy. But I'm going to try and get some of the downtown I'll add to the end of this video. Otherwise, that's the end of the dangerous neighborhoods portion.